So I said that I might hop on to share what happened at G's Memorial. So for those of you who didn't catch my first live stream today, this is the very first time I've done 2 live streams in one day. It's obviously really important, or something I deem really important anyway. So for those of you who didn't catch what I was sharing in my earlier live stream, I was going to G's memorial service. She has been my hospice. I'm a volunteer hospice, or I should say I'm a hospice volunteer, and G passed away. So today was her memorial, and I won't go through everything that I shared in my first live stream, but please do catch that. Please do catch that, because I think there is a universal or collective message there as far as not just how we can deal with loss, how we usually deal with loss, and specifically that message was about how we can bring our kids along on the journey. In other words, how we can really support them in understanding that death and or loss and or grief, for that matter, is really a part of the life cycle. So as I mentioned in that live stream or in that video, I said, I might come on and share, after the memorial, and sure enough, I'm absolutely feeling the need to do that. And because once again, I think there is a universal and or collective sharing and truth that that will come through. So number one, here's to life imitating life, because for those of you who did catch the first live stream, I talked about how I didn't know if I was going to take Nolan to the memorial, to my my hospice patient's memorial today. And now I think it's hey Peter, hey Modu. Now it's slightly comical, or not comical, but curious, because for a second there I thought maybe I won't take Nolan to the memorial. I'll let him, sort of enjoy his summer vacation. And then within 3 to 4 seconds, I thought, no, Nolan needs to be at this memorial with me. Again, as I shared at the beginning of this message, he needs to see that a death is a part of life and that it's okay. Again, the more that we don't talk about it as adults, the more that we become the adults that really, and listen, pain, or I should say death is painful enough, right? Loss, grief is hard enough. But we don't necessarily need to suffer sometimes as much as we do as adults when we deal with loss. And I think part of the reason that this happens is that we don't talk enough about loss and grief. So I take Nolan to this memorial service, and so I had shared about all of this in the earlier live stream, and I take Nolan to the memorial and, talk about life imitating life. We get there, we're sitting next to each other in the church, and I went up to one of G's 7 children, who I had the honor of texting and responding to and communicating with over the last year as I volunteered to love up on their mom, to visit her, to love her, to feed her, to do anything and everything that I could as a hospice volunteer, because they were all over the country. So I said hi to her. We shared a couple tears. I just, thanked her for the honor of letting me, of trusting me, entrusting me with her mom, and just what a pleasure it was, to love her and to be with her throughout this time. And then we heard one of her sons get up, her eldest son, get up and say a few words. And here's what I wanted to share. That was so beautiful and so poignant, as Nolan, especially as my son is sitting right next to me. Her son says, one of the greatest gifts that my mom gave to me is the gift of always treating me like a person. And he shared a couple of stories about how, when he was younger, he wanted to make certain decisions, and even though she wasn't so keen on that decision, she let him make the decision, and she trusted him with those decisions. She just trusted him, period. And he said that he thought it was pretty cool back then as a little boy, and that now as he's older, that he thinks it's even more cool that she treated him like a person, and that she really did trust him with life. And is that not so beautiful? In other words, that's exactly what I was sharing in the earlier live stream about me, meaning about my grandmother, my mother trusting me with life. In other words, trusting me with, hi Star, trusting me with, telling me the truth, telling me where I came from, and telling me, just the truth about whatever it is that we were dealing with as a family, that we had dealt with as a family, and how that really truly created something inside of me that is still here and ever growing today. In other words, that really does allow me to not only, sort of give back to my own son and sharing with him what the truth of the matter is. In other words, just sharing with him as honestly, as genuinely as I can about any topic of life, but definitely, around death, or around the stories of our life, where we come from, etc. And so it really was something that was very heartfelt for me, because here I had just made the decision to bring Nolan along and to continue to share with him how death is a part of life, and have him be my companion at my hospice patients memorial. And again, trusting him, just trusting that he can handle it, right? That he can handle life, because this memorial, this passing, this loss, isn't weird or odd or bad or should not be felt. I hope we feel it. I hope we feel every single loss. And I don't want to hide that from Nolan. I didn't want him to not bring him to the memorial. I don't want to not let him see me feel everything that there is to feel in this life. And then here is G's son at his mother's memorial, essentially saying exactly the same thing, like thanking his mother for doing this very thing. And so I think, for all of us parents, it really sort of brings up a question, how can we be, or are we being, are we really being those walking and talking truth tellers, to our kids? And how can that truth empower them? Not so much, I think a lot of times as adults, or at least I've heard this from different adults, we think that the truth is going to hurt our children, when in actuality the truth can actually can empower them, to be more of themselves, to be themselves, to feel comfort in their bodies, to feel comfort in their own skin. So how can we be more truthful with our children? And how can we take the story of G's son, getting up at her memorial and saying, thank you, Mom, for allowing me, the trust, for trusting my decisions, for trusting me, and for always treating me like a human being versus a child. How can we take that story and first of all honor it, because I think it's beautiful, but then really also have it instruct our own parenthood, instruct our own leadership, instruct our own ability to tell the truth, to be honest, and know that that truth and that honesty is only ever going to lead us to more of the good stuff, to more purpose, to more passion, just to a more content and a more peaceful life. So here's something about G that some of you might know, because you've been following my journey around, being her volunteer, being a hospice volunteer. But how cool is this? And I keep, it will never cease to amaze me how life so beautifully always matches you up with the perfect experience, the perfect person, the perfect people, the perfect next step. And when I say perfect, I don't mean that it's always like easy or effortless. But when I say perfect, I mean, even the discomfort, even the uncomfortable stuff, even the harder stuff always leads you to purpose, especially if you are allowing yourself to be as truthful about what you really want, and what you want to say, and what you want to do, and how you want to bring your kids along, etc., all of that. So here's my sort of perfect matchup. And that matchup was with G, was with my hospice patient. She, so I met with her about a year ago. She, in 1986, she walked from Los Angeles to DC to, to be a symbol of peace. In other words, to protest against nuclear war. And there were many other stories about her that I learned throughout my time with her. But how cool is that? And I remember when I got paired up with her as my hospice patient, I couldn't stop talking about it for like a day or two. You know, I told every friend, I was going to say every husband, I just have one husband. I told Josh so many times, you know, it would be like, I would tell him, gosh, Joshy, can you believe that they paired me up with this, like this gorgeous woman who, you know, I was getting even deeper into my sort of social entrepreneurship. And, you know, we started the Greater Good Party, and there's just, you know, I've become more active in that way. And so here was G. Here I was being paired up with G. And anyways, I just was so excited telling everyone. And again, I think with Josh, I probably said something, you know, 1 minute, and then 5 minutes later I'd go, no, really, can you believe that I was paired up with her? It's like the most perfect pairing ever. And hopefully it was, you know, I feel like it was for her as well, because we did have so much to talk about. We had so many things in common. You know, our hearts, you know, really beat in a very similar way. We really wanted to support people and help people and really just be voices of truth, being voices of what we felt was loving, more loving, most honest, most loving and most honest in this world. And so that's what she did. She walked, if I'm remembering correctly, it took about 3 or 4 months for her to walk from Los Angeles to DC, again, in support, in this sort of rally of sorts, protesting nuclear war. And of course, many campsites later, it was very hard for G to really, you know, talk to me, because she had suffered a stroke, so it was hard for her to speak. But the you know, the amount or the stories that she was able to tell me were so inspiring. You know, the story of all the different campsites she stayed in and or stayed at, and you know, just her experience walking from, you know, one side of the country to the other for something that she really believed in. You know, really in honor of. In respect of her truth, you know, what felt like her truth, which was, you know, she didn't believe in nuclear war, and she wanted to let, along with hundreds of other people who walked again in 1986, she wanted to make her voice known. She wanted to make her love known. And it was, you know, I could tell you many other inspiring stories about her, but that's one that I really wanted to come and share, because I think there's so many of us in this world right now, and definitely in this country, that are standing up for what we believe in, that who are, you know, standing up for what we believe in, standing up for those who maybe don't feel like they have a voice, or their voice has been muted. You know, I'm so inspired and so motivated and so charged and really sort of I was going to say electrified, feels like just really yeah, motivated by so many of us, like G. You know, by so many of us who are saying, no, we're going to walk, we're going to talk, we're going to donate our time, our money, and we're going to keep talking about the important issues. I think that's one of the things that she really reminded me of and is such a symbol of. And so today, you know, on the day of her memorial, I wanted to come on here and just share this part 2 with you, in saying that, number one, it was so beautiful to hear her son say what he said, excuse me, and how, again, life imitating life, how it completely matched up, like, so beautifully to what I shared earlier today. And then really just to honor her, you know, to honor her 7 kids who were at the memorial today, who said beautiful things, who, you know, where those beautiful things really matched up with how I knew her. You know, so I really honor her spirit today, but in honoring her spirit, I feel like I'm honoring all of our spirit, this collective spirit of wanting to continue to do what feels right for the greater good. And I want to see what my title was to make sure that I shared everything. Hello, Modu. Oh, I'm so excited to see you in September. Hi, Star. I can't remember what the title was. I think I said something about, oh yeah, well, I said those 2 things. So what her son said, and then her doing the Great Peace March in 1986. And I think that's really what I wanted to come on and share. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll have to go there right now and update the title of that first live stream. If you haven't seen part 1, definitely check it out. I think for, even if you're not a parent, if you're someone who's dealt with loss, if you're a parent, if you're someone who does feel like she or he wants to keep putting real out there. Again, earlier I talked about high touch with the high tech. I think, the high touch part really connects to or talks about a realness that we're all looking for. And so if you're one of those people, I think the first live stream will connect with you, definitely. And then I think in closing, I just want to say, rest in paradise, G. You were such a beautiful part of my life, and I hope that I was able to give you love and make you feel important. One of my greatest wishes on this planet is to make the people that I connect with, whether I've known you for an hour or a year or 20 years or my whole life, one of my greatest wishes is to make people feel important. And so when I think of you, Gerda, I hope that I made you feel important. I hope that, our time together, whether it was feeding you, your oatmeal, or telling you stories about animals, or reading to you, I hope that you really felt how important you were, not only to me, but to your children, who live all over the U.S., and how important you were to this country and to this world, for speaking up for what was right, what felt right in your heart. And with that, I promise to do right by you. In other words, to keep doing what you did so beautifully, specifically in this country. Again, sharing your heart and speaking up for everything that you thought was true and real and right and loving. So with that, everyone, enjoy your lives, and I will chat with you soon. Love you, Gerda.